Başlayalım isterseniz. Dilbilim buluşmalarının 118.sine hoş geldiniz. 118 tane olduk. İnşallah 1000'e doğru gideceğiz. Hedefimiz 1000. 1000'den sonra bırakacağız artık. Bugünkü konuşmacımız Orta Doğu Teknik Üniversitesi Yabancı Diller Eğitimi Bölümünden doçent doktor Betil Eröz. Konuşmasının başlığı da Decoding Speech Events Using Ethnography of Communication and the Speaking Model. Konuşmasını İngilizce yapacak diye anlıyoruz buradan.
Evet.
Biz kayıt açmadan önce dedik ki İngilizce dışında başkaca dillerde mesela İzlandaca, İsveççe gibi dillerde de yapabilirsiniz dedik. O da kabul etti. E, Evet, kendisine öncelikle Dilbilim Bölümü adına ve İzmir Dilbilim Çevresi adına çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Davetimizi kabul ettiği için, bizi kırmadığı için.
Tabii ki.
E, Yine bölümümüz adına, Dilbilim Bölümü adına kendisine hoş geldin diyoruz. Burada diğer hocalarımız da var bölümde. Onlar adına en azından ben hoş geldin diyeyim. Ben sözü daha fazla uzatmadan hocamıza sözü bırakıyorum. Buyurun hocam.
Teşekkür ederim Murat Hocam. Hem davet ettiğiniz için hem de bu tanıtım için, nazik tanıtımın için. Evet, benim konuşmam İngilizce olacak. Müsaade ederseniz o şekilde başlayıp devam etmek istiyorum.
Evet lütfen.
Önce bir ekranımı paylaşayım sizlerle. Herkes görebiliyor, değil mi? Tamam.
Şu an bir sorun yok gibi hocam.
Tamam. Ben çünkü sizleri görmüyorum artık bu şeyden itibaren. Bir şey olursa Murat Hocam siz müdahale edersiniz.
Tamam tamam tabii ki. Buyurun.
Sorun sıkıntı olursa. Okay. Okay, I'll get started with my talk. As Murat Hocam just mentioned, the title of my talk is Decoding Speech Events Through Ethnography of Communication and Delheim's Speaking Model. My talk will not be a seminar. I'll have a little bit of a hands-on task that we're going to do at the end of my presentation. So hopefully you will be motivated to join me. So in this presentation, I'll talk about ethnography of communication as a theoretical and methodological framework for understanding how communication practices are culturally patterned, socially meaningful, and functionally organized within communities, speech communities. So central to this tradition, as you may all know, is Delheim's proposition that linguistic theory must address communicative competence, which is the culturally grounded ability to perform and interpret communicative acts appropriately, depending on the situation and context. So this led to the creation of Delheim's famous speaking model for speech event analysis. Various scholars throughout decades actually expanded the ethnography of communication framework to encompass multimodal communication, speech events, communicative roles, and the interpretive systems through which communities make sense of communicative behavior. So the purpose of my talk is to synthesize these key ideas into a unified conceptualization of ethnography of communication, introduce the analytical elements of the speaking model, and demonstrate how ethnography of communication can be applied to the study of complex, structured speech events, something that we're going to do together, actually. So to illustrate these principles, we will practice with the speaking mnemonic to analyze speech events from two murder mystery movies, based on Agatha Christie novels. I'm sure some of you are at least familiar with the works of Agatha Christie. So we'll focus on the final reveal scenes led by the Belgian detective Hercule Poirot, and through these examples, we'll see how ethnography of communication illuminates the cultural, narrative, and performative dimensions of communication, highlighting the ongoing relevance of Heim's approach in contemporary sociolinguistics and multimodal analysis. Now, let me move on. Ethnography of communication, we'll start with as a theoretical framework. Ethnography of communication emerged in the 1960s as a transformative approach to the study of language in use. It was developed by Delheims, and this framework rejected the view of language as merely a system of grammatical structures. Instead, it reoriented linguistic inquiry toward culturally grounded communicative practices. The ethnography of communication begins with the central question, as you may see over here: what does a speaker need to know to communicate appropriately within a particular community? This question moves linguistic inquiry from a focus on grammatical competence to a consideration of the full range of sociocultural knowledge required for meaningful participation in communicative life. Okay, I know, Murat Hocam, I don't know if you're enjoying my presentation so far. Here is one of your favorite scholars. But I will talk about the critique of Chomsky. So Harms's critique of Chomsky's linguistic competence pointed out that real-world communication involves more than grammaticality. Speakers must know when to speak, to whom to speak, for what purposes to speak, and in what manner to speak. So this knowledge is culturally specific, socially acquired, and often unconsciously deployed. Himes suggested that linguistic knowledge and cultural knowledge are inseparable. So speakers must know both the rules of grammar and the rules of use. So without the latter, of course, communication fails, even if linguistic forms are correct. And this forms the basis of the communicative competence principle, as you may all have heard. Communicative competence is the core of the ethnography of communication framework. Himes proposed that communicative competence includes knowing which forms are appropriate for which settings, which forms, the linguistic knowledge, understanding expectations for turn-taking, politeness, silence, displays of affection, within the norms of culture, the norms of the values in a culture, or norms of social life. Recognizing genre-specific structures like narratives, sermons, jokes, insults, debates, interpreting contextual cues such as intonation, gaze, gestures, spatial positioning, and being able to navigate the ideological and moral assumptions underlying, communicative acts. So speech as a culturally patterned action, when we come to this element of ethnography of communication, ethnography of communication views communication not as an isolated linguistic output, but as a culturally meaningful behavior, like I just talked about. So speech doesn't simply convey information. It performs social actions such as establishing or negotiating identities, enacting authority or deference, marking relationships, displaying emotions, engaging in ritual or ceremonial behavior, and enforcing moral order. So in this sense, the ethnography of communication framework brings communication into the center of anthropological inquiry. So speaking is treated as a cultural practice akin to rituals, beliefs, and social organization. And we can say that the theoretical environment in which ethnography of communication developed prioritizes communicative patterning, identity, power, and cultural meaning. The speech community, when we come to another element of ethnography of communication doesn't assume that shared language defines a community. Instead, a speech community is a group that shares norms of speaking and interacting, interprets communicative forms in similar ways, if not the same, and transmits communicative expectations as part of socialization. So the concept of speech community here emphasizes shared communicative knowledge, not necessarily shared linguistic codes. Ethnography of communication is both a theoretical lens and a research methodology. Uh, as a research methodology, it investigates communication in its natural, everyday context using ethnographic principles. So, the core methodological commitments that ethnography of communication research typically includes are participant observation, so observing communication in the settings where it naturally occurs. Recording multimodal interaction, so capturing speech, gestures, silence, prosody, pacing, all of those things. Interviews and metapragmatic inquiry, how participants themselves describe or justify communicative practices, so their own perceptions of what's going on in the communication setting. Contextual interpretation, so examining the social, cultural, ideological background of speech events. So the researcher must understand not only the observable interaction, but also the underlying cultural logic. That is, how participants recognize and categorize kinds of communication. As for units of analysis, ethnography of communication distinguishes between speech situations, which is the settings or context where communication typically occurs or is expected, like a classroom, a courtroom, for example, and speech events, which are bounded episodes with social norms and functions, like debates, sermons, performances, a lesson, a seminar, and also speech acts, which are the smallest meaningful communicative action, individual communicative moves like apologies, refusals, requests. So this layered approach enables analysis from micro practices to macrocultural patterns. We can actually take a look at the technology, the role of technology in this framework. When we take a look at high resolution audiovisual instruments, they enable multimodal analysis. When we have software like NVivo or tools like Elan, they enable microanalytic annotation. And digital ethnographies are enabled through online chat, social media genres, and with speech recognition technology, it's a lot easier to do transcription and pattern identification. So these developments in technology have really helped with the research methodology of ethnography of communication. Now we come to Heims's speaking model. This is, this model is a structured and systematic approach to describing all relevant dimensions of communication, of interaction in a certain speech event. It doesn't prescribe meaning. Rather, it ensures that all culturally relevant factors are considered by the researcher. So in this mnemonic device, actually, here is what speaking stands for. So S is for setting and scene. This is the physical time and place and the psychological framing of the talk, like playfulness, somberness, solemnity, And P is for participants. These are the roles, relationships, and alignments between the speakers, the addressees, the audiences. So that's the participants in communication. E stands for ends, and these are the goals, the intentions, and these are the intended outcomes and the achieved outcomes of conversations. A is for act sequence, and this is the structure, the ordering, the content of the communicative actions. K is for key, and that stands for the tone, the manner, the emotional coloration, like the spirit of the talk. I is for instrumentalities. These are the channels, like oral, written, gestural channels, the registers, different language registers, styles of talk, dialects, accents, and also modalities of talk. N is for norms. These are the rules of interaction and interpretation. what people mean and the meaning that they get out of conversations. And G is for genre. These are the recognizable, culturally and socially recognizable communicative types, communication types like narratives, debates, confessions, you know. So this framework, this speaking framework, is not a theory in itself. Rather, it's an analytical tool that describes and reveals cultural knowledge that's embedded in communicative practice. So the model is valuable, not because it explains communication, but because it makes the implicit structure of culturally intelligible communication explicit. Okay, now we come to analyzing speech events. In this part of the talk, I've actually finished talking about the more theoretical parts, and I'll continue with the more practical parts of the talk right now. We're going to see an application of the speaking model, and then we'll do a little task altogether. So the climactic final reveal scenes in movies or series, actually, based on murder mysteries by Agatha Christie or any other writer that is writing detective novels, allow a rich application of this speaking model. That's why I chose the two scenes from murder mysteries here. The narratives in these final scenes, they exemplify the speech events that are bounded, which means there's a very clear beginning and there's an end. Like it starts with an epiphany, which is like the aha moment of the detective where, you know, he or she understands what's going on. And it leads to the gathering of the suspects for the final reveal. It's highly structured. These scenes are highly structured. They're characterized by a sequential exposition, like it follows a certain order for revealing the murder. It doesn't just go and say, oh, okay, you're the murderer, just go and arrest them. But, you know, you will see that there's a certain order in coming to that conclusion. These are also culturally recognizable. The detective denouement is an established narrative genre. It is the final part of a movie where all the loose ends of the plot are tied together and the mystery is solved. So, but this is a recognizable genre. These are norm governed. For example, in the case of Agatha Christie, the detective Poirot speaks, the suspects listen. Sometimes there are little arguments and discussions, and then the revelations unfold. So these are the rules of these scenes. And these are multimodal. There's gesturing, there's pacing, there's gazing, and intonation. These are all essential to the meaning. So in these scenes, you will see that Poirot's role is not simply that of a detective. And during these scenes, he becomes the judge, the narrator, the moral arbiter, and the ritual officiant. These qualities make the reveal scenes ideal for ethnography of communication analysis and also to practice the ethnography of communication analysis. Now, this is the first thing that we're going to do together. I will let you watch one final scene of the Mysterious Affair at Styles series. And we're going to talk about the setting, scene, participants, and the speaking acronyms here. As you are watching, I will point out these issues. You don't have to remember them because I don't think you will be able to watch this and then the other together. So let me see if we can get to that. Can you see my screen? Can you see the YouTube screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So as you're watching, I will be giving you some clues about what we're looking at in terms of the speaking mnemonic. Can you all hear this?
Yes. Yes.
Where on earth have you been from? Good evening, Hastings. Good evening, Madame Cavendish. We are assembled, yes?
So as you can see, the setting is physically and symbolically enclosed, a closed room.
Boom. Please.
The participants are stratified.
We are all assembled, yes?
These are all the suspects.
With one exception. Pardon, but I must ask you all to wait a few moments longer for the arrival of Monsieur Ingerthorpe.
If that man comes into the house, I leave it.
Oh, no, Mademoiselle Howard, you must
The
not
key
do
is
this.
dramatic, emotionally
Remember,
charged
mademoiselle,
at
that this
this
is for
point
the sake
and then
of
also
your
later
friend,
on.
the late Madame Ingerthorpe.
Why have I been summoned? What's going on?
Wish I knew, old boy.
Ah, voilà Monsieur Ingerthorpe. Asseyez-vous, monsieur.
So there's some interruption and some affective reaction,
Mesdames et messieurs,
which are the norms.
good evening. As you all know, I was invited to investigate this case by Monsieur John Cavendish, who tonight, in his prison cell, awaits the verdict of the jury. I at once examined the bedroom of the deceased, and I found several things indicative. To take first, a fragment of dark green material. I found it caught on the bolt of the communicating door between that room and the room of Mademoiselle Cynthia. Now, for a long time, I did not recognize it for what it was, this material. It was a piece torn from a green land armlet. At Styles, there was only one person who worked on the land, Madame Cavendish. Therefore, it had to be Madame Cavendish who entered the room by that door.
But that door was bolted on the inside.
When I examined the room, Hastings, yes. But in the first place, we only have the word of Madame Cavendish to say that the door was locked. And in the confusion that followed, there was ample time for her to bolt it again. No, I am convinced that Madame Cavendish was actually in the room when the deceased was taken ill.
So as you can see, in terms of the act sequence, this is
Her reasons
highly
for entering the
structured,
bedroom of Madame
starting
Ingerthorpe had to do with
chronologically
her
about
terrible
what
jealousy.
happened in the room.
For she had learned of the existence
And
of
there's a
letter,
ritual
but it was
narrative
this letter
performance.
that she had confronted Madame Ingerthorpe about, and which she
He's
believed
tying all
would show
loose
the proof
ends
of the
as
infidelity
he's
of her husband
reenacting
with Madame
uh,
Reeves.
the night of
At
the
that
murder.
moment, she was quite literally
So in terms of
mad with her jealousy,
instrumentalities,
mad enough to creep into the bedroom of her
there's a
mother-in-law
distinctive
in
register.
order to
He
retrieve
has
that
controlled
letter.
prosody. And he's using multimodalities, like he's using his gestures, he paces, and he's also reflecting on past events. So there's like all these flashbacks.
Am I not right, Madame?
So it was you who destroyed the will?
No, Monsieur Lawrence. There was only one person who could have possibly destroyed that will. Madame Ingerthorpe herself.
But she only made it out that very afternoon.
Nevertheless, mon ami. The temperature that day was 80 degrees in the shade. Oh, yes, it was very hot. And yet, Madame Ingerthorpe ordered a fire to be lighted in her room. Why?
Because she wanted to burn something.
Précisément, Inspector Japp. Now, at 4 o'clock, Madame Ingerthorpe quarrels with her son and threatens to denounce him to his
Again,
wife.
for instrumentalities, you can see that he is, this detective who is a Belgian, has a distinctive English register. He inserts
this
French
argument
words, and
which
he has a
Dorcas
very
overheard.
particular accent.
But
in
she
English,
mistook John Cavendish for
despite the
Monsieur
fact that this is
Inglethorpe.
actually an American actor.
At 4:30, she makes a new will, eliminating John Cavendish from his inheritance. Now I must conjecture, but I believe my conjecture to be correct. She writes a letter to her lawyer, Monsieur Wells, asking him to call on her to finalize the new will. She finds she has no stamps in her desk. So she goes to the desk of her husband to see if he has any stamps. It is locked. So she opens it using her own key. She discovers a paper. That very paper that Madame Cavendish believed to be the written proof of the infidelity of her husband, John, but was in fact far more serious.
Is this really necessary? All we need to know is who put the poison in my mother's coffee and why the poison took so long to act.
Yes, that is very true, Monsieur Lawrence, but here we have the little problem, you see, because Madame Inglethorpe, she did not drink the coffee.
What?
No. The stain on the carpet was the coffee. She must have spilt it before she could drink it. But feeling in need of a hot drink, she heated up a cocoa and drank that.
If the strychnine wasn't in the coffee, and we know it wasn't in the cocoa, where was it?
Now I will pose to you the little question. What third medium was there readily to hand? A medium so suitable for the disguising of the strychnine that it is absolutely extraordinary that no one has thought of it. Hastings?
I've no idea.
No. No. Inspector Japp. Her medicine.
Somebody put strychnine in her tonic.
No, there was no need, Hastings. It was already there. The strychnine that poisoned Madame Inglethorpe was the same strychnine prescribed quite legitimately by Dr. Wilkins. The addition of bromide to a solution containing strychnine precipitates all the strychnine into colorless crystals which fall to the bottom of the mixture.
Again, exemplifying the act sequence here,
It is likely
there is a ritual narrative
last
performance
dose
that
is
he follows. He doesn't go to the end immediately. He takes step
Someone
by
added
step
her sleeping
explanation.
powders to her tonic.
Yes, Inspector. But the last link in the chain was a paper one, huh? But it was not a will. You see, our murderer wrote a letter. And that letter he accepted. There was nothing to connect the murderer with the crime. But Madame Inglethorpe found the letter, locked it in her dispatch case, and took it to her room. It became essential that that letter should be retrieved.
Yes, in terms of the genre,
Without
there's
it,
a ceremonial
Sutherland faced our
revelation.
murderer.
So first he
But
talks
I had
about the
already locked
how,
briefcase
now
of
he
Madame
comes
Inglethorpe
into
on
the
morning
who.
of her death. At the very moment of trying to retrieve the letter, I was approaching the room with Monsieur John Cavendish and Monsieur Wells, the lawyer.
He's going to do more harm than...
Desperately, the murderer looks for somewhere to conceal it. But there is no way in the room of destroying the letter. In a moment, the letter is torn into 3 long strips,
You've got the keys still.
rolled into the spills, and placed amongst the other spills on the mantelpiece. The murderer then unbolts the door to the room of Mademoiselle Cynthia and gets away.
My mother kept some things like this.
And there, mes amis, they remained until they were found by Poirot. Oh, yes. The little gray cells have done well today.
So here's a melodramatic confrontation that's coming up, where in the end he's revealing the
Tonight is the
murderers
night.
enacting
There's
like a
good
moral
time
discourse.
coming once the old woman is dead and out of the way. No one can possibly bring home the crime to me. That idea of yours about the bromide was a stroke of genius. We must... And here the writer breaks off. It must warm your heart to know that your lover thought so fondly of you that he could not bear but to bring himself to write to you at this so important moment. Mademoiselle Howard.
This is the melodramatic confrontation of the murderer.
It's nothing to do with me.
Oh, but it is everything to do with you, mademoiselle. Did I omit to read the greeting on this letter? Forgive me. My dearest Evelyn.
You fool! You bloody fool!
Quiet, Evie.
No, it is too late for silence, Monsieur Inglethorpe. The handwriting on this letter shouts your guilt. You are a heartless murderer.
Now he's the judge. He's establishing moral conduct.
How dare you make
And then
such an
these are the
accusation?
melodramatic confrontation and revelations of the murderers here, the two of them, actually.
You do disappoint me.
All right. We love each other.
Take them away, Inspector Chap.
Do you think we were going to sit and wait for the old bitch to die? We deserve the money anyway.
And I'm not sorry. I'm not the least little bit sorry. Mr. Inglethorpe, madam.
Okay, so I'll go back to actually, no, I'll go back to the PowerPoint. I'm sorry, not here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, this is one way of analyzing a speech event, and this is the way that we analyze it, as I was telling you about what the scene was and the setting and participants. So this is what we can make out of this. So now, I think, yes, I have time. That is great. We're going to do this together. What I would like you to do is to watch another final scene. And for this, I'm going to need you to take some notes, actually, in this task. I'm going to show you another final reveal. And I would like you to analyze this scene using the speaking model. So observe, if you would, please, any differences that there may be from the other final scene. So what is the scene setting? Who are the participants? What are the ends? How is the act sequence? What do we know about the key and instrumentalities? And what are the norms and genres in the scene? So if you would please help out with this. Here we go with our second bit. I'll get the answers from you in a little bit. This is another final reveal scene. So.
Is there anything we can do to help?
I regret that it is too late for anyone to help the daughter of Madame Giselle. However, if you both would be so kind, there is something you could do to help. Please join me in my suite, as I have called together all those I consider relevant to this case.
Why? Well, surely you don't think...
Mademoiselle, I think only of apprehending the murderer of Madame Giselle. I hope you only think of that also. Mesdames et Messieurs. First, I have the task to restore the reputation of Hercule Poirot, the celebrated detective who had the misfortune not to observe the cunning murder of Madame Marie Giselle, even though it took place not 10 meters away from him. And so, when I had the dubious pleasure to attend the final of the tennis match, I observed an incident between you, Lady Horbury, and Madame Giselle. It seemed to me quite clear that she had some hold over you.
No more money, comprenez?
A hold that you might go to any lengths to be rid of.
Oh, now that is outrageous. Cicely would never be involved.
Monsieur Raymond Barraclough. You are, I understand, an actor? A profession that I think would equip you very well for the impersonation of the mysterious American who seems to have been the accomplice of the murderer.
And how are we supposed to have carried out this murder?
As for opportunity, the wooden tube was hidden in the gap next to your seat on the plane. But as my experiments prove most conclusively, it would have been impossible for anyone to have blown the dart on the plane without the greatest risk of being seen. And so we ask ourselves this question. Why was the wooden tube hidden in such a place where it would undoubtedly have been found?
To mislead us.
Vraiment, Chief Inspector. So next, we come to the wasp. What was the purpose of the wasp?
The same thing. To mislead us as well.
Thank you, Mademoiselle Gray. You know, Mademoiselle Gray has been such a help to me throughout. Une parfaite assistante. And she is right. But by the time the body of Madame Giselle was discovered, the wasp, it was dead also, because it had been killed by Monsieur Dupont.
It was buzzing around my coffee.
But did you have to kill it, sir? Was that really necessary?
What? Are you saying that because I killed a wasp, I also killed Madame Giselle? That is ridiculous.
If the wasp was put there to mislead us, was there not also a danger of it failing to do so? Unless, of course, our attention was drawn to it by the murderer himself.
It's a wasp sting. I killed a wasp with my cup. All I did was kill a wasp with my cup.
However, Mesdames and Messieurs, we know that the murder it was not committed by the wasp. And we know that it was not committed by the use of the wooden tube. No. It was committed by the poisoned dart being pushed into the neck of Madame Giselle by the hand. Now, we know of only 3 people who passed by Madame Giselle during the flight. The 2 air stewards, Monsieur Mitchell and Mademoiselle Jane Grey, and Monsieur Daniel Clancy.
Oh, no, really, I didn't come all this way to...
So why did you come all this way, Mr. Clancy? Because it would have been too suspicious to have refused?
How dare you?
Monsieur Clancy displayed an expert knowledge of the murder weapon.
Goodness, it's a dart. Native dart.
And in his house, I found a wooden tube very similar to the one we discovered on the plane.
I told you. It was for a search for a book.
For a book that you never wrote, Monsieur Clancy?
Because Wilbraham wouldn't let me. He thought the whole idea preposterous. How can I write a detective story when my detective refuses to take any part in it?
What's he talking about?
I fear that Monsieur Clancy suffers from a malady common to many writers of fiction. His characters, they take control. At times they appear to him more real than the world around him.
You mean he's a madman? Murdering madman. Keep him away from me.
Please, Lady Horbury, rest calm. Now, as for the 2 air stewards, I have already discounted Monsieur Mitchell.
Well, that only seems to leave you, Miss Gray, wouldn't you say?
Now, look, I'm sorry, I protest. This
is past a joke.
No. It's all right, Norman.
I was indeed suspicious of Mademoiselle Grey. I was suspicious of her new friendship with Monsieur Gale. Was this friendship really new? Or was she the true daughter of Madame Giselle? But then, of course, at last, we met the real daughter of Madame Giselle. As soon as she entered the room,
I was looking for Inspector Fournier.
I was convinced I had seen this lady somewhere before. It was not until Mademoiselle Grey caught her nail that I remembered.
My nail. I must file it.
In the lobby of the hotel, when I first saw Lady Horbury, she was accompanied by her maid.
Fetch my cigarettes, will you?
Yes, Lady Horbury.
On the plane, when she called out for the nail file, it was brought to her by this same maid, a lady that we later came to know as Anne Giselle.
I've come to claim my inheritance.
This is all very ingenious, but I'm afraid Monsieur Poirot doesn't really mean it. He keeps deliberately changing his story. First, poor Jane killed Giselle, and now her daughter did.
No, Monsieur Gale. The daughter did not kill the mother. The maid of Lady Horbury, she left the first-class cabin at the start of the flight, and we know that Madame Giselle did not die until shortly before we landed.
Then how did she die?
You will recall, Monsieur Gale, that I asked you to disguise yourself as a reporter to go to see Lady Horbury.
We'd really like to do a piece on you for our series.
You mean he was...
I apologize for the deceit, madame. But you know, at first, the disguise of Monsieur Gale, it was hopelessly unconvincing, huh? But why? Why was the disguise of Monsieur Gale so unconvincing? There are two reasons for this. First, to make me believe that it would be impossible for him to impersonate the mysterious American. And secondly, and most important of all, to ensure that I would never learn the truth about how this murder was committed. You see, in the list of the personal belongings of Monsieur Gale, I had already noticed that he was traveling with his dentist's coat. During the flight, when coffee had been served and the air stewards were in another part of the plane, Monsieur Gale makes the visit to the toilet. He changes into his dentist's coat and alters his appearance with the help of some cotton wool which he had brought for the purpose. He picks up a spoon, which gives him the task of a steward to carry out, and hurries down the corridor of the plane. He then pushes the poisoned thorn into the neck of Madame Marie Giselle. On his way back, while I was asleep, he put the wooden tube into the seat in front of mine. He then returned to the toilet and removed his disguise.
Very good. Very good, Monsieur Poirot. You have thrown the real murderer completely off his guard. Now, could we have the real solution, please?
I think you will find, Monsieur Gale, that the truth of how this crime began is even more intriguing. Anne Giselle hated her mother for abandoning her when she was a baby. She was brought up in Canada and came to England to work as a maid. By coincidence, she came into the employment of Lady Horbury and began to move into the high society. Despite your humble profession, Monsieur Gale, you aspired yourself to this society. And no doubt it was on one such occasion that you met the maid of Lady Horbury. Your relationship, it developed. Until one day, this same maid told to you her secret. She pointed out to you her mother and told you of the power she had over Lady Horbury. Of course, after 23 years, Madame Giselle did not recognize her daughter. And luckily for you, her daughter hated her mother so much that she willingly agreed to your plan. To murder her in such a way that Lady Horbury would be blamed.
He planned all that. I could have... I mean, the police, very nearly.
With Madame Giselle dead, it was essential that Monsieur Gale should not be married to the daughter. Anne would claim her inheritance, but in the event of her death, her husband would receive the wealth of Madame Giselle. But then Monsieur Gale learned that I had met Anne in the office of Inspector Fournier.
He ordered a taxi for the Gare du Nord.
He was terrified that I might discover that also she was the maid.
You told me.
No, Monsieur Gale. You see, you left your fingerprints on the poison bottle.
Now, that's absolutely ridiculous, because I will...
You wore the gloves when you committed the murder. Indeed. Thank you.
You better come along with me, sir.
Why did you do it, Norman?
For the money, Jane. For a very great deal of money. Why else?
Okay. Let's come back to this. I would like to hear your evaluations of this. So let me just stop my share for a little bit. If anybody has any ideas about the setting and the scene, the participants, will you help me out here?
Ben yardım ederim istiyorsanız da tabii.
Yes, please, hocam.
Evet.
Anyone with the setting, any differences that you have observed in these two speech events?
Bir defa daha aydınlık bir yer. Yani o öyle bir şey var, etkisi var.
Evet, so the setting is more
Brighter.
spacious. It's bigger and it's brighter. It's a bit more, it's stiffer, değil mi hocam? A little bit stiffer. Okay. What about the participants? Anyone?
Okay.
I have a shy audience.
Yeah. It looks like they actually admit the authority of the detective. I think his name is Poirot.
Poirot, yes.
Or something.
So they're a more silent and more attentive audience, and Poirot is more of an authoritative investigator in this piece. When we think about the ends, okay, there is the reconstructing of not just the events, but the motives. There's talk about greed, talk about betrayal, so the ends have all of these involved in it. And as Murat Hoca just mentioned, in terms of the act sequence, this one is a bit more structured and more ritualistic than the previous one. But of course, again, there is the reconstruction of events, exposing hidden facts, the agendas, finalizing with the accusation. So coming to an end, so following a certain order of events. In this one, the key, if we may say it, may be a bit more solemn, more reflective. And in terms of the instrumentalities, again, there's a lot of emotional charge in Poirot's voice, his gestures. And in terms of norms, again, like Murat Hoca just mentioned, there was more of a silence, more of an acceptance of Poirot's moral authority. There was more protest and more interruptions from the participants in the earlier scene that we watch. And in terms of the genre, it blends
It's a
canonical,
classic detective.
exactly like a detective finale, like a moral instruction, and there's ceremonial narrative of telling the truth and everything. Okay.
Sounds like The Murder in the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe. So there was a detective there.
Yes, exactly. Well, yes, as somber as a Poe piece, maybe, probably. Okay, so I will finish. Let me see. I will finish my talk. Now let me share my final or my conclusion or my final slide with you guys. To wrap up, the ethnography of communication provides a powerful lens to study how communication functions as a culturally organized social action. By focusing on the communicative competence, the pattern practices, and the interpretive frameworks of communities, this framework reveals the meaning-making processes that purely linguistic models may not capture. So Hymes's speaking framework remains till today, even today, as an enduring tool for describing and analyzing complex communicative events. So by applying this model to a murder mystery ending or a reveal scene of a murder mystery, we can see how even fictional narratives demonstrate the patterned, ritualistic, culturally intelligible nature of speech events, highlighting how genre, norms, multimodal cues, moral discourse, they all converge in communication. So these scenes demonstrate that communication is not merely linguistic, it is ideological, performative, socially relevant. And ultimately, ethnography of communication enriches our understanding of how people use language, not only to convey information, but to enact identities, mobilize values, and structure social life. Okay, so this ends my presentation here. Thank you all for your attention. If you have any questions, any follow-up inquiries, you may contact me at this address. I think I may have a few minutes for questions. If anybody wants to ask questions, I have time. I can stay a little bit longer than the time. Any
Evet.
questions, any comments, any questions, any reflections?
Teşekkür ederiz Betil Hoca'ya. Şimdi bir soru cevap seansımız var.
Türkçe de olur, İngilizce de
Evet.
olur. Nasıl
İsveççe de
istersen.
olur, değil mi? İsveççe.
İsveççe, özellikle İsveççe, evet. En tercih ettiğim.
Evet. Delheims'ın adını tabii yabancı dil öğretimi environment'ı dışında bir yerde görmek benim için ilginç oldu. Bir tek orada ben hani Delheims deyince işte yabancı dil öğretim ortamlarında işte değil mi?
Tabii
İletişimsel
communicative
ediş,
language
communicative
teaching'in işte
competence falan değil mi?
şeyi ne derler sebebi
Evet.
olarak ortaya çıkıyor. Tabii
Yani bu
yani
bağlamda hiç
Delheims'in
düşünmemiştim. İlginç oldu benim için.
evet ama
E,
tabii ki Delheims daha çok hani sosyolinguist profiliyle o kimliğiyle
evet.
daha önemli. Fakat tabii bizim alanımızda İngiliz dili öğretiminde, eğitiminde tabii metodoloji yani communicative approach'un iletişimsel işte modelin ortaya çıkmasının en büyük sebebi.
Evet.
Ama çok enteresan bir şey. Bu mesela 70'lerin başında ortaya çıkmış bir fikir diyeyim yani communicative competence modeli. Yani teori o kadar çok hani o kadar derinlemesine bir fikir olmadığı için teori olarak niteleyemeyeceğim kuram olarak ama e, 70'lerin ortasına kadar çıkmış bir şey ama daha çok tabii bu communicative language teaching yani communicative approach'un devamında gelen bütün metotları etkilemiş. Fakat bunların hepsi daha çok hani daha yeni sayılabilecek. Yani tam çıkış noktasında aslında İngilizce öğretmenliğine, İngilizce eğitimine ya da dil eğitimine aktarılmamış bir kavram.
Evet. Sorularımız varsa sorabiliriz. Teşekkürler var. Ee,
Ali Enis Bey diyor ki I'm not fond of movies too much. Hocam sizi biraz korkutmuş olabilirim değil mi? Böyle aslında cinayet filan ölü insanlar akşam akşam insanların kabusu olacak ama my presentation gave you new point of view. Thank you very much Ali hocam for your comment.
Evet, şöyle bir bakalım. Panelde başka soru ya da teşekkür ya da katkı sağlamak isteyen varsa. Evet, teşekkürler geliyor panelden. Bunun dışında herhalde e, Delheims'ı özümsedik diye ben anlıyorum buradan. Hep
Hocam
beraber.
özellikle sizin için derin derin detaylı detaylı anlattım. Murat
Evet.
hocam.
Beni ikna etmek için de zaten bu soru değil mi? Evet, tamam. Ben ikna oldum. Yani ben
Sen
gayet tamam.
taksçılar hedefimdi hocam.
Evet. E, Bundan sonra Delheims çalışıyorum artık. Kelime değiştirmiyorum.
Hocalarım ben de teşekkür ediyorum.
Evet.
Davetiniz için ve katıldığınız için bu ekibin hepsine teşekkür ediyorum. Dediğim gibi her zaman hani e-maille, telefonla bana ulaşabilirsiniz. Aklınıza takılan bir şey olursa bunu uygulamak isterseniz bir şekilde bunu ben tabii çoğunlukla sosyolinguistics derslerimde kullandığım bir proses bu aslında bu seminer diyelim daha doğrusu. Yani bu tabii daha yaya yaptığımız bir şey ama yani konuşma analizi yaparken yani bu speech event analizini yaparken e, çok pratik bir gerçekten araç oluyor bizim için bu speaking mnemonik. O nedenle bunu burada da konuşmak istedim bunda. Ama dediğim gibi genel olarak hani sociolinguistics'le ya da conversation analysis'le belki ilgilenen, culture studies'le ilgilenen bir e, araştırmacılar için daha belki uygun bir şey olabilir bu.
Evet.
Ne derler? Framework. E,
Teşekkür ederiz.
Ben
Başka
teşekkür
galiba soru,
ediyorum.
katkı yok. Ben
Tamam.
buradan tekrar bölümümüz adına teşekkürlerimizi sunuyorum. Bize katıldığınız için, İDÇ'ye katkı sağladığınız
Ne
için.
demek?
Haftaya 119'uncusuyla karşınızda olacağız. Konuğumuz Bahçeşehir Üniversitesi Yabancı Diller Eğitim Bölümünden doktor öğretim üyesi Serkan Uygun. Konuşmasının başlığı da Variation in Turkish Heritage Speakers, The Case of Definiteness and Subject-Verb Agreement. Bana daha çok hitap ediyor. Benim anladığım kadarıyla Subject-Verb Agreement var.
Evet, evet.
Evet. Teşekkür ederiz hocam. Katkı sağladığınız için tekrardan. O zaman oturum burada sonlandırıyorum. Herkese iyi akşamlar diliyorum.
İyi akşamlar, teşekkürler.